Today on
Doomed!
cancel culture, boycotts. Today on Doomed with Matt Binder, we will discuss whether or not what's going on now could be considered cancel culture, boycotts, or what if it's neither? What if it's something else? And we'll talk about the history of pressuring corporations to basically create change. And you know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you get what you want, sometimes you don't. But we'll be discussing all of this and more on today's show. And to give us that history, to break it down for us today on the show, we'll be talking with a longtime progressive blogger and activist. You can see his work as a contributor for Digby's Hullabaloo, Crooks and Liars, and his own Spocko's Brain blog. It's Spocko. He called into the show. Oh man, when did you call into the show again, Spocko? I think it was definitely the
February
Rush Limbaugh
18th show.
You remember the exact episode. Wow.
After Rush Limbaugh is dead. Yes.
I forgot to pull us up on the feed here. Hold on one second. I'm a bit of a mess. 1 second. This usually happens.
Well, I can put up something while you're doing that, talking about I wanted to do a song, Poor Rush is Dead, from the TV from the movie Oklahoma. But you know, of course, it was right after it happened, and we're not allowed to make fun of the dead. But it's been a month now, so we can have more fun there.
No, hold on. The video feed is up. Cool. We will get started. I'm sorry. There's a little bit of technical difficulties as usual at the beginning of the show. I'll at some point in time I'll get this down. But yeah, let's jump right in. So, like you said, February 16th, you called into the show for the patron half of the show. So a lot of people listening now have no idea what's going on. They're wondering who you are, what we're going to talk about. But you called into the show on the patron half on February 16th after a whole conversation about Rush Limbaugh dying and the legacy he left behind. As a far right-wing pundit, the king of conservative media, if you will. And you know, you called it and you just gave us this great, like it was honestly, I when you started going, I was like, holy shit, he's going to give it all away. This should be a first half. This should be like part of the freebie podcast. This should be for everybody. You can't leave this to the second half. So, you know, we talked for about 30 minutes, I think it was. And then I was like, you know, I'm going to have you back on. And I'm sure you wondered in these weeks, well, what's going on? I haven't heard from him, but I promise you, you were always on my list to get right back on the show. I was just waiting for the perfect hook. And quite frankly, we got that perfect hook in these past few weeks. You know, obviously there's this whole debate going on online between, you know, the right and not even just the right, certain individuals online just constantly calling everything cancel culture, whether it's, you know, the Dr. Seuss estate deciding not to print certain Dr. Seuss books anymore, being turned into cancel culture. Hasbro saying that, you know, we're going to have a potato head brand, which Mr. Potato Head will live under, so there can be other potato heads. Boom! All of a sudden, that's cancel culture. The Looney Tunes deciding not to put Pepe Le Pew in the new Space Jam movie. Oh no! All of a sudden, that's cancel culture. And then, fast forward a few weeks from that, you have this really restrictive law passed in Georgia with severely limits voting rights in that state. And, you know, people have been arguing, this isn't a voter suppression bill. It is, but, you know, they say it's a voter fraud, stopping voter fraud bill. It's not. That's not even a thing, voter fraud. It barely, if at all, even measures on the odometer for, although voter fraud can be probably counted on one hand every year. But when this happens, when this bill passes, you had all these corporations, after, seeing pressure being put on them, come out and say, we're not going to do business in this state. And I think MLB was the first domino to fall, where they basically pulled the All-Star game from Atlanta, and they've moved it somewhere else since. Where they've moved it, I think everybody knows. I don't, because I don't pay attention to baseball, but they moved it. They moved it. So all that set up is basically to get you here today on this show to say, damn, a lot has happened since you came on the show to talk about the old school right-wing radio boycotts that went down back in the what was it, like the mid to late 2000s.
Mm-hmm. So, first of all, I really encourage people to become a patron of your show, because then they would have heard all this great stuff.
Ooh,
and
I already have to say, Spocko is already my favorite guest to ever come on Doomed.
You gotta help promote the people who help you. That's a big part of it.
Why,
and
you.
I'm not totally joking about that, because what you're just talking about, the setup, and said suddenly there was this corporate pressure. Well, that just doesn't happen magically. I mean, there is a strategy that happens, and it has become more sophisticated, but we've also learned how to do it correctly. And I want to make sure that people talk. I'm gonna go a little bit about the history, and I don't want to like turn people off. I'll try and be my my best Ken Burns. Give people like, here's what's happening, but I want them to understand that the big part of this is there are ways that the left can use pressure, and it's not always the kind of pressure that people understand, but there's a financial pressure that they can use. There's a moral pressure. There's a pressure that you can use on corporations that is like making sure that they stick with their brands. And I want to kind of cover some of that, historically. And the big thing that I want to do, because again, I was listening to your Patreon channel after I was done talking, and they said, you did a lot of great work costing the right-wing media hundreds of millions of dollars, because they had Angelo on from Media Manners, Angelo Carson, and he said what people need to know is that this was a huge effort that cost them hundreds of millions of dollars. But who's next after Limbaugh's gone? Well, that's going to be Tucker Carlson, for one. So there are things that we can do to defund Tucker Carlson. And the strategy is not necessarily what people would think. And I'll cover some of that ways that we can do it. And I also want to do something, because I really believe in people doing their own little bit of activism. I'm going to give some ideas for people to take some of the things that we've heard on your show recently and how to use them to stop disinformation on, particularly right now, the anti-vaxxers. And the next thing I want to do is help defund the politicians who supported the insurrection. And I think that's going to be a really big thing. And right now, Judd Legum, who's got his newsletter, Popular Information, I think it is explaining how the corporate pressure is happening on the corporations that used to support the congressional insurrectionists. I mean, who said, they said, you voted against the certification. So we corporations, we're not going to give these 147 congressmen any more money. And I'm going to talk about what happened with that and why we need to stay on top of that, because within the next few weeks, we're going to have a huge opportunity to find out who the actual senators and or Congress people are who helped violent insurrectionists. So I think that might be something useful. So I just want to kind of give people a preview. So stay tuned.
That's, first of all, I think it would be extremely wrong of me to continue this interview without pointing out, because I'm already seeing it in the chat. It would be wrong of me to not point out right now that, damn, you have probably one of the best radio voices I've ever heard in my life. It is. I mean, did you do radio before? Like, did you have you done radio?
I did radio in college, which I did not like because we had like 2 listeners, and so it was a college radio station, and so I would call and we'll take the 5th caller, and like there was no callers. So, and I can't see people. Like I like to be able to see people when I'm telling jokes. I also have a background in stand-up comedy, but I've done some voiceover stuff, and I did. One of the things I did was, just some funny voices. But one thing to know is like, professionally, what I do is I help people give presentations and talk to various different audiences and groups. And, I help people give their messages, book authors and, corporate executives, et cetera. And I do all this under a pseudonym. And frankly, I'd like to, kind of come out of it. But I'll tell why I still do the pseudonym because I'd like to help more people. And if I name the people who are the clients that I've trained, the big name clients I've trained, people would be like, holy smokes. I mean, we're talking multi-billionaires that you would know. But I also really believe in progressive activism. And I really have been working to help various different people who are activists get their message across, as well as actually doing the activism, showing people, say, here's how it's done. I mean, like, one group I'd like to be able to help is some of the people in the Progressive Caucus sometimes, get their messages across. And you might have known before I was on we were on the listeners, I was saying, do I sound good? Do I, I don't do the video because I don't want people to see me. Keep the mystery. But I do want people to hear well, and it drives me nuts. I don't know if it drives you nuts. I'm watching MSNBC, and we got a guest on, like Susan Rice, talking, and it's cut out, and it's like the sound's cutting out, and it drives me nuts because part of the understanding of getting your message across is that you want to look good and sound good, and it's not just what your message is. It's like, how do you tell it? And how, the AV stuff comes across. So I'm just, again, I want to make sure that people understand that there are things that you can do. There's things that I do that's behind the scenes that, frankly, I'd like to be able to help out people in a way that is not, I don't want to work for the tobacco companies, but I do want to help, progressives out there who, get their message across better. So anyway,
I will say this, I was, in between the last time you called in, I did a little, research because I know I've come across your pseudonym before, Digby's Hullabaloo, Crooks and Liars. But I was doing a little bit of research and I didn't realize this, like you were like really like a major figure in those mid to late 2000s boycott movements of folks like Rush Limbaugh. I came across your name and a little write-up about you in the New York Times from, I think it was 2006 or 2007.
2007, yeah. And I'll stop you right now because this is one of the big messages. What I did was not a boycott. And that's a huge piece that I wanted to say. I mean, I worked on a lot of different specific messages for my work. And one was, talking about violent rhetoric. I didn't use hate speech. I used violent rhetoric because that was a big thing I was concerned about. And I never used the word boycott because it's something very different than what I did and what I trained multiple other groups to do. And I'll explain this, why. Okay, so we'll go back into the history of boycott and where it came from. We could do that. I don't want to go that far back, but this morning Sam Cedar was talking on the show. It's like, yeah, talk about how the right wing was doing all this boycotting and stuff like that. Well, when I started looking at right wing radio, the thing that it concerned me was that they were saying these horrible things, and I specifically talked about violent rhetoric. I mean, I talked about one of the hosts. There are 3 hosts in this KSFO San Francisco station. And they were saying things like, blow people's brains out. One of the hosts, Melanie Morgan, talked about putting a bullseye on Nancy Pelosi's big laughing eyes. Mm-hmm. Another host had some by the name of, and I'll get the names now. He's actually still on the air. Brian Sussman had some incredibly bigoted, racist, bigoted stuff towards Muslims and, you know, he took on callers and said, why don't you eat pork? You know, those kind of things. I mean, and I took all these audio quotes and I sent them to the advertisers. And I sent them to them and I said, look, you may not know that this is what they are saying right after they run your ads. And in some cases, they were actually doing a live read. So for example, you've got Lee Rogers doing a live read for United Airlines right after he talked about, you know, blowing this guy's brains out on the air. I was like going, what? You know, and so the thing about this is the corporations had no idea what was happening because they just look at the numbers. They say, okay, this is the demographics, this is the audience ratings, shares, and I will buy this amount of ads for this thing. One of the things that I did was track all of these, which is, you know, they didn't even know. And so that's one thing that Angela said, like later also, that was, you know, putting together a database. I mean, the group, the Stop Rush group that came out of the people who at Daily Kos. And I said, the founder who passed away, I put it in my previous thing. Oh, by the way, on my web page, on my YouTube page, I have the 30 minutes that you and I had on, you know, with captions, I mean, with subtitles, so you can, you know, read it. And I talked about how a big part of this was people understand that if you talk to corporations and they say, okay, here's something that you probably don't know about, that's one thing. In order to have any kind of pressure, like a lot of boycotts, they're saying, if you don't change your behavior, we will do this to you, okay? And hopefully, you know, we will withdraw our monetary support. Now, with a show like this, where they go, okay, so this show, if you don't like it, they'll say, just don't listen to it, okay? And they've already incorporated into their matrix, the advertisers saying, okay, well, you know, so they lost 1 or 2 viewers that, you know, out of how many thousands that, you know, like the show. It didn't matter. It didn't matter to the radio station. So my goal here was to convince the corporations to alert them of what was happening and to show them that what they were saying on the air was not in line with their corporate brand, with their values.
Right.
And this
right.
and this is a big thing, which was, so the pressure for them wasn't coming from outside. The pressure would come from inside. They would look at it and say, hey, I don't like this. And so, for example, the people that I listened to I went to the human resources people, I went to the marketing people, I went to the PR people, and I wrote them and I said, are you aware of their incredibly racist, their sexism, which I had this one clip, Lee Rogers talking about Dana Perino. Remember her? She used to be he said, we want to have her on the show. She's got a full frontal nudity because she's got a great rack. Okay. So I sent that audio clip to them, and like all the women there were like going, what? We're advertising on this show? Are you kidding? I had a homophobic quote that Brian Sussman said, and I sent it to the people in San Francisco who put on Beach Blanket Babylon, which is this big, gay culture thing. And they didn't believe it. And so I said, look, hey, it's not me. I mean, I could just turn it off. Listen yourself. If you hear this and you think about that, well, what are you going to do? I don't have to, do it. You're paying for this. And this is a big thing that I'm wanting people to understand, which is if you can get in line with their own values, then you've got a much greater chance of convincing them. And the pressure is like, hey, this is not what we stand for. It's like, who cares about this? All right. So, and that was a big part of what I did. And I went to all these, and then the station freaked out. And because they were owned by ABC Disney at the time, and they were also, ABC was trying to sell them. So what happened was I got hit with a cease and desist notice from the ABC Disney lawyers saying that saying it was a copyright infringement.
How? You weren't posting these publicly, were you?
Uh, Actually, I was, as well as I was sending it to them on email. Now, this is something that a lot of people, and that's part of my, tech background. It's part of my secret sauce. I could tell you all about it, but I understood how email works and how tech works. And so when somebody clicked on one of the audio links that said something horrible, the staff at the company said, "Did we buy this ad?" And they would forward it to their ad buyer. And the ad buyer would click on it and say, "Did we do this?" And they forward it to the agency. And they would all listen, and then it would forward it to the PR. And it got all the way up to, head Disney side. I actually got the Disney Corporation that was advertising on one of the shows. I got them to pull their ad from the show.
Wow.
And
I mean, this sounds like, I mean, even if so, this clearly sounds like fair use. I mean, it's not like you're posting a whole show for people's enjoyment to consume. You're posting a clip in order to provide an educational value here.
Right. And this is the other part that I want to tell people this, and it's the part of me that wants to be an educator. But to understand that when you do something like this, you need to be prepared for the backlash. And I knew that they were going to come after me for this fair use thing. So what I did is I did some research, and I went and worked with the people from the Electronic Frontier Foundation. And I said, they're going to try and bust me on fair use. How can I prove that this is all fair use? It meets all the criteria. And so we set up my webpage and everything, so it always had that fair use. And that means including context and showing them that I wasn't earning any revenue from this, etc. And they threatened me with that. But because I prepared for it, when it did happen, the people who were my web host, it was a company named called One-on-One Hosting in Germany, was their main headquarters. They just didn't know. They just like, we got a Disney intellectual property thing, pull it. Even though I had already removed everything, and I knew that I had met all the cases for fair use. So they still came after me, sued me, or sent a threatening letter. And this is the other part that I think was having the EFF there protecting me was really helpful, because frankly, it scared the crap out of me. And last time we talked a little bit, I said, one of the ways that the whole Trump organization works is threats. They use legal threats. They use physical threats. They use threats of violence. And there isn't necessarily a good way to respond to that. You just you pull back. I mean, I get this letter and I'm going, I don't want to be sued by Disney for take everything I got. So I folded, I was I pulled stuff like that. But because I had somebody behind me and an organization behind me, I was able to stand up to them and say, no, you're the one who's threatening my free speech. You are in the wrong. And we spread it, and we turned it into a national story. I turned it into an international story because it was in Germany. And I also focused on the violent rhetoric. And the violent rhetoric was a real important part of it, because I see that this is still, it's become worse now. And the people use the various different tricks to get out of it. Like they would say, I was just joking. And so I showed them multiple times where they weren't joking. Or it was out of context, and I showed them, here's the context that proved that this is wrong.
Some things don't change. That excuse is still used today. Just joking. Right. It was a bit. It was I wasn't being serious. A parody, satire.
Exactly. And this is the other part that I do is I really want people to understand that, for example, threatening speech is not protected speech. And if we're going to if we do these kinds of actions, they're very much interested in going right after us and do, the same things. And so, and that's one of the reasons I, still play this, the pseudonym a part of it, because when you go after a corporation's revenue, or if you get in the way of somebody, a revenue stream, or you cost them their job, they get very upset, even if you are totally in the right. And so that was the part of it, which was hey, I'm not the one who's taking away the money. I just alerted the corporations. They're the ones you should talk to. You can convince them to do something different. But here's a thing that he uses: understanding who your opponents are, understanding how they would respond. On right-wing radio, and later we'll see this in Tucker Carlson, on right-wing radio, they have these personalities, which you now see as, I'm going to double down. You can't talk, you can't, tell me what to say. And they go further. And when they do, that's when you need to, bust them. And the going further with them is threats against me. And I know that they were fairly subtle, but a legal threat is really scary. And when you read things, I mean, you see stuff about getting death threats all the time. I think in this day and age, it is ridiculous that there aren't more civil cases about death threats, and that there's a way to do that. And this is the thing that I've actually been hoping for, is finding an organization that's going to say, when you threaten our activists with death threats or whatever, we will prosecute. We will come after you in multiple ways once we've determined your intent. So I really want to make sure that people have a way to fight back and understand that they're going to be, if they're successful, they're targeted. And also the other side, never underestimate them. I just you got to understand, they will keep coming. They use the same tactics, but they don't quit. They don't admit, they don't say, you got us, I'm going to pull back, and the left, they're good about supporting people once they've been hit. But, after I did this, I tried to go to people and say, hey, I could be helpful. I could, do this kind of stuff. And they're like, yeah, we don't really want to draw attention. We don't want people to, find out that we're funding you. I mean, George Soros didn't give me any money. But the right wing is, they will go after activists. Like, for example, Angela was on, and he got sued by Limbaugh. I can see you're being bored now. I'm sorry. Am I boring you with this?
No. I'm fixing the mic here. No, not at all.
I just envision these people at home listening. Oh my God, what is he going on? I really want people to understand that there's a way that we can tie this all together.
Let me actually stop you for a second, and because you brought up. You brought up how earlier today I was on the Majority Report, like I usually am on Thursdays now, and I was teasing the topic of tonight's live stream, the podcast, and Sam, I was talking about the boycott. Well, again, not boycott, but the campaign to stop Rush Limbaugh, the campaign to stop Glenn Beck, and Sam very adamantly wanted me to bring up the right wing boycotts of people like the Dixie Chicks. I'm sure he also was thinking about what happened to his co-host Janine Garofalo on the old Majority Report on Air America, and what they did to her. So I think it's interesting how you've explained how what we do here in terms of what you've done and what the progressive movement did to Rush Limbaugh and Glenn Beck wasn't really a boycott, because what they did to the Dixie Chicks was ridiculous, and obviously not all boycotts are ridiculous. There are real good reasons for boycotts, in my estimation. I mean, hell, Martin Luther King Jr. had said that one of his last speeches was about how it's if the corporate powers in the U.S. don't take a stand, pretty much, then it's time to put economic pressure on them and let them know there will be repercussions economically to their bottom line for not taking a stand or for actively supporting something that's against the civil rights movement. But basically what you're saying, though, is that, and it completely makes sense if I get this right, is that this can't be a boycott if we're not the people consuming this stuff. Like, if we're just showing the advertisers or the companies who fund this stuff, hey, this is what you're funding. I mean, where's the boycott in that? We're not saying we're not going to watch it anymore. We never watched it to begin with, or to the effect that to the lengths that we have watched it. It's literally just to criticize it. It's not like we're sitting here going, right, oh, we're such big fans of Glenn Beck or Tucker Carlson, but this time they've gone too far and now we gotta take no. That's not what we're doing at all here.
Right. Right. And, the current issue that's going on in terms of the activists that went to the Major League Baseball and the other corporations about the Georgia law. And I know one group of activists that I've worked with, Color of Change, is really good and very sophisticated. And they understand, like, there's, most people don't know, there's, like, within corporations, there's people who are in charge of, corporate engagement with, with the public, and they've got their all various different, groups. And their goal in some ways is to make it sure that they kind of follow their corporate value statements. And they went to them and said, look, you are in a position where it is, democracy. I mean, this is the your values. Do you value democracy? It's kind of like you say it right here, etc. So what are you going to do to show that? And you might not remember this. I don't know where I said this, but right when there was a major shooting in Atlanta, I don't know. I actually don't know if that was a shooting, but there was a bunch of discounts that the NRA had given out, and corporations, like someone went to them, and it might have been one of the activist groups that I knew about. They went to them and said, "Look, you're giving NRA members a discount for flying. Do you really want to associate your brand with it?" And they said no. And then what happened was legislators turned around and canceled the tax break to Delta. And I thought that was very interesting. And one of the things it's hard to do, and I'm just, there's a little activist by myself, but it is thinking of the next step on a long-term process. Now, if I was somebody in Georgia, a Democrat progressive on that side, I would then go to because I look it up on Open Secrets and say, here are the Georgia legislators that Delta gave money to. And then they turned around in order to get the crazy NRA vote. And they said, screw you. I'll bet a month later or 2 months later, they'll come back to the corporations. Hey, we really want some more money. Give us some more money.
Right.
That's when they are screwed. But the corporations don't want to talk about it. They think, oh, you'll still be good. You're still a Republican, and you're going to cut our taxes, etc. You can then prove to them, look, they're going to chase the crazy vote. All right. Behind the scenes, they want the money, but they still want the crazy vote. Okay. So what do? This is a wedge that progressive activists can use. And I would say this, and I don't know where the people are there listening on your Renee and the Take It Easy and those in the chat. If you are looking at your state or your city, find out who is the Republican who voted for not to certify, who supported the insurrection. Okay, go look at who gave them money. Go to Judge Legum's popular information blog, and you'll see that all of these corporations said, we're not going to give money to any of these people who voted not to certify, supported insurrectionists. Okay, then go and find out who the other candidate running against them, find out what the local press is, and send a little note. Say, hey, tomorrow when we find out that Andy Briggs or Mo Brooks actually sent text messages to the violent insurrectionists, months ago said, we're not going to give any more money to them, but you kind of changed your mind recently. So aren't you glad you're not going to give money? By the way, the person you should be giving money is not the Republican. They're bad. This is the other part where I'm saying is, if you're going to have pressure, corporate financial pressure, you need to tie it to some kind of, news event, and you need to tie it to something that is in line with the corporate values. So this has not come out yet. And I was, going to write about it, but I always write, a week and a half before things happen and people forget about it. But any day now, you're going to get some text messages showing people and I'm saying, Andy Brooks or Mo Brooks, Andy Brooks or Andy Briggs from Arizona or Mo Brooks, a very specific involvement with the Proud Boys or the insurrections. Involvement with the people who ended up killing Officer Sicknick. All right. So when that happens, that's when you go to the corporations and say, hey, by the way, you said you were going to give money. You really need to know that this is actually still happening, because people keep wanting to get back and into the money train. And so this is the corporate split. And I'll say another thing about this is there's a whole aspect of what we see on TV and what we see in the headline news and CNN. And when I look at things, I think, okay, there's a news bit that will show up on MSNBC. And then I also look and say, what will be used on late night, on Seth Meyers, a closer look with Seth Meyers. I mean, like one of my favorite pieces is Close My Seth Meyers. And so I look at who writes these things, and I write them and I say, hey, this is a funny bit. This is ridiculous. That's the news hook. Then it turns around and the corporations go, holy crap, I didn't know that. Somebody alerts the corporations, just like I alerted them to the violent rhetoric. And they say, that violent rhetoric that you saw on the video? Well, here's the GOP congressperson who you funded, who supported it. Aren't you really glad that you stopped giving money? Oh, you haven't stopped giving money? Don't you want to pledge now that you're going to pull your money away? Very clearly, those are the links that need to happen. And specifically, if you have, I always say, start small, start with the local thing, and then build it nationally, because it's hard to do. And it's easier when it's a specific one. Your congressperson, this, the person who gives the money is from this group. That group, and you say, hey, I'm just alerting you to this. I'm not giving you any pressure. I'm not telling you we're going to stop buying your products. You, the corporation, are going to decide that.
Right. Now, let me get this out here, because when and I know a lot of listeners are probably thinking this too, because this is a show where a lot of my listeners and viewers are leftists, and they probably, and I've seen this argument before, they sort of cringe at the idea of, I guess they would say, depending on corporations or big business to sort of take a stand on these issues. The idea that they would care about what these moneyed interests, what these millionaires and billionaires, who cares if millionaires and billionaires have these sorts of values? And, to that, I think, I agree with that take. Like, I don't care about, the CEO of Delta and how he feels, or, if the CEO or founder of some other of Coca-Cola has egg on their face. Like, that's not the point. I really want to stress that we're basically just using these corporations as a tool to ostensibly really get what we want out of them. I mean, who cares what happens to these companies? That's not the we're not actually worried about their brands and their brands being devalued. That's the hook to get them to care. So the broader movement can get someone like a Tucker Carlson or a Glenn Beck or a Rush Limbaugh to honestly face the consequences of what they do and the harm, the real world harm they unleash on the world. Whether these corporations lose value or they, whether they're even here tomorrow. Who cares? Like, just use them while you can,
I'll give a couple of insights, and this partly come on my background. And so I've, advised people at the highest levels, from major corporations. And I work with them, and there's a couple different groups of people there. And one of the ways that people don't, understand. I mean, like, so for example, I advise people when they're giving a financial conference call, like they have their messages. Here's our earnings and here's our share per earnings, like that, and prepare for all the analyst questions, prepare for all the editorial questions. I also advise the people who are talking to just regular media and press like that. And one of the things that you find out is that those messages aren't always consistent. So you'll find that there's somebody who is saying, we believe in diversity and we're doing these kind of programs. And then it comes to the, financial conference call, as somebody talks about that, they're like going, hey, they're going to bring that up. It's like only if it ends up costing them money or they're making money. Okay. And and I'm telling you this because I see another opportunity here. And this is one of the things that Angelo is a friend of mine. I wish that I had gotten the George Soros money that he does, but
send me those big checks, George. George, I want those big checks.
But I really think that there's an opportunity here, just like I did after the Glenn Beck announcement. Quarterly earnings calls happen. And right now, Fox News is in a position, News Corporation, where they're losing advertisers on the Tucker Carlson show because people say you don't associate with that. And they are losing viewers because they're trying to be normal and they're going over to, OAN or Newsmax. All right. So right now there's going to be, coming up soon, a financial conference call. Back in 2011, I did this for 6 months before that. I wrote the institutional investors and I said, look, News Corporation has 2 hours of Glenn Beck's show where there is no revenue being generated. I mean, 88 advertisers I've authenticated, they have left. Why don't you ask Rupert Murdoch, how long is he going to subsidize this? I mean, because this is your money, okay? And he can spend it if he wants to. But I don't think that it's a profit generating revenue question. And this was exactly the kind of questions I'd seen in hundreds of high-tech startups that had gone public, where they always ask, what's your pathway to profitability? Okay. So I called up the conference call and I acted like an analyst, and I asked the question of Murdoch. I said, because of the color of change action, 88 advertisers have left the Glenn Beck show. Now there's just gold ads and in-house ads. How long are you going to continue to subsidize the Glenn Beck show until it becomes profitable? And Murdoch was like, well, I think it's a very profitable show. And I'm like, well, what that question unleashed the regular press to ask further questions about it, because normally they don't break down this information. And I didn't ask them to break it down. I just acknowledged, what was public. That turned out it wasn't just 88 advertisers. There was over 300 advertisers that would not advertise on the Glenn Beck show. And when Beck got canned, it was because he wasn't generating revenue. And big corporations like Murdoch, they can lose hundreds of millions of dollars if they have a further agenda. But if you're in a position where you're like going, oh, okay, I know you don't break it out, but, institutional investors say, why are you not maximizing revenue in this place? And if you want to spend the money, Murdoch, put them on the New York Post, which loses over $100 million every year. And this is another thing that, getting back to the, talk radio and right-wing radio, is one of the big things about Limbaugh was that he was profitable. And in America, it's kind of like, well, if you make money, you're gonna, we'll let you do anything. I call it the top sales guy mythology, or the top sales guy. He can be a sexist pig and do terrible things, but hey, he brings in 80% of our revenue, so let's just kind of look the other way. So if you want to get rid of this guy, you got to go and say, how can you make him stop making money? If he's no longer a huge rainmaker making money, it's much easier to get rid of him. All right. So you've got somebody like Bill O'Reilly who's bringing in billions for them, or whatever, how much. And you've got somebody turning around and saying, okay, well, we'll just hush up these women, give them $40 million and tell them to go away. But Bill's still bringing in the audience. So right now we've got this window, okay, where they really want the audience. Tucker Carlson, they want that kind of right-wing audience, okay. They'd also like the money, but, so we could go to right now, go to the quarterly calls and ask these questions and say, hey, you don't got the advertising revenue from electoral ads. Your listeners are going and viewers are going away to OAN and Newsmax. you get no advertising revenue off the Tucker Carlson show. How long are you going to keep this up? I mean, are you going to be, sane? Are you going to chase the crazy vote? Okay. And they're going to want to have it both ways, but that might be a place, to do something. Who's going to put the pressure on them? Well, it's not going to be us. It's the institutional investors who say, get back to an audience or something like that. That's the way that you use a leverage. It is you putting the idea in their head that they could make. You're using their greed. Like, you could make more money if you get rid of this guy. But if you've got somebody like Murdoch who's saying, I want to lose money with him because I use him for power. I use him for this. So when we went after Limbaugh, one of the things that we did was, I was not directly involved in this, but I had taught the techniques to people. And I said, you need to understand that it's about the money that gets generated by selling ads in these other stations, okay, in other places. And they would pay money to Limbaugh as well as they would get revenue from running ads on their station. Well, when Limbaugh started getting so many people said, I don't want to run ads on the show or whatever, he still had the audience, but the people who were the sales guys saying, hey, I'm not going to have, make my Christmas bonus. I'm not going to get the G.I. Joe with the Kung Fu grip. I need to have some money here. What are you going to do? Well, the radio stations sent they took the Limbaugh show off of their flagship stations and put them on these tiny little, small stations. And Angela said on the episode on your 218 episode, mentioned how one of these companies, I think it's, I don't know if it's Clear Channel or iHeartRadio, is like $20 billion in debt. And so what is their excuse? Well, how do you deal with this? The right-wing radios basically had to eat it. They've had to eat their cash cow for the longest time when Limbaugh's gone. And they have now, looked to dark money other places to keep them support because they want the audience. All right.
Right. Well, they got Dan Bongino stepping in for Rush now. Maybe Dan Bongino will be the next Rush Limbaugh. Highly doubt it. So I think we established this on that show, but Rush Limbaugh, a terrible person, but the man had a talent for talk radio. And that's why he was so successful and was able to be such a cash cow.
Yeah, and I was watching an episode of Star Trek Voyager the other night, episode season 5, 14, called Bliss, and it was a very interesting episode because in it there was this this entity that allowed it was giving people everything that they wanted, a wormhole back to Earth, and then you get there and you have your jobs and stuff like that. Everything would be wonderful. Well, the skeptics who came in and said that doesn't seem right, they weren't just ignored. There was the crew that fell for the con. They were actively kind of shut down using gaslighting and saying, well, maybe you're mentally ill, or are you sure that's happening? And when that stopped working, they had to physically take them away. They had to, shut them down. They had to, use force to get them to do it. And the reason I found this very interesting is because you're thinking about all the people who are still Trump fans, okay? And you're thinking about all the, the disinformation and stuff that he still drives so much of that loyalty and passion and stuff. So how do you stop that? How do you did that? Well, one of the things that I'm thinking is showing people the consequences to the people who are insurrectionists. And right now, I think that there's a couple of really hard, the Fox News or whatever, they're trying to downplay the events so it doesn't look like it's that bad. But we really have to make people know that there will be consequences. And one of the things that happens with people on the left and free speech people is they get pulled into well, I don't like what they have to say, but I'll defend to the death their right to say it. And that media, they also feel in that place like, well, I can't, I don't want to be doing any censorship or whatever. And so one of the ways that I think that this is important is, these techniques that I developed are designed to help people think of other methods to weaken the people on the right, looking at what their vulnerabilities are. Okay. And one of their vulnerabilities is they want money. Okay. And so how do I get in the way of the money? If I can't get away, if legally what they're saying is fine, if I can't use the FCC, FTC, or those ones, then how can I use a way to weaken them? And this brings me back to your previous guest. What was his name from last week? Ian. What was Inman? What was his name? The guy
I'm running from the Center of for Digital, right, combating digital hate, right.
By the way, folks, if you haven't listened to that show, really listen to it. I mean, I listened to it twice.
Oh,
it was really, really informative, partly because he was able to track down the 12 people who were behind the anti-vaccine. And it was a huge business. And one of the ways that you understand is okay, it's one thing if people say, well, it's my free speech, I can say what I want. It's okay, fine, but you don't have to get rich doing it.
Right.
And
for me, actually, when it comes to the online world, which is obviously what the right is completely obsessed with, their ability to say what they want on the internet. Listen, right. If there was a platform that was just open for all to just say what they want, I could, and with no thumb on the scale, just literally. Just no algorithms pushing anything, just an open platform for people to blog their thoughts, and it's just there with no outside interference, promote. You know what? I mean, I'm sure there would be some issues here and there, but for the most part, some of these figures who've been deplatformed, I think I would be fine with them on there. The major issue is that there is no platform like that. Every single one of these platforms, take one of these conspiracy theorists, one of these right-wing disinfo agents, one of these white supremacist groups, and they see, hey, this is getting lots of engagement. We're going to push this stuff because it'll keep people on the site, which will up our advertising revenue. That's the major problem. It's not the fact that they're just on there. It's the fact that these platforms are built to promote this stuff.
Right. This generates revenue. I mean, I've joked before to my friend Intero Bang, my tragic flaw, inability to monetize. So that's in Silicon Valley. That's the thing, getting the clicks. Okay. So the clicks equals revenue if you've got it. Now, if you take away the revenue from the clicks, you might still have the clicks, but there's less incentive for that. So what do? And it also, the other thing is understanding disinformation on the vaccines and stuff like that is a really big, important situation. And I don't think that the government has really wrapped their head around why this is important, and the various different platforms need to be more proactive, but it's not going to happen unless there's something like what happened with the Dominion voting systems. Now, we all noticed this, and I saw Chris Hayes going, "Wow, I can't believe! Look at this! Everybody, shut up!" And the Newsmax guy interrupted My Pillow guy because he was saying something and he was afraid of getting sued. That is the fear of losing financial dollars and lawsuits. Can that be used in the vaccination area? Not just that the platforms actually have rules about disinformation, but you say if your friend knows the 12 people who are doing it, then you can end up getting subpoenas lawsuits from perhaps those vaccine manufacturers for disparagement of the vaccine. Now, I happen to know because I'm one of those people who reads the terms and conditions and acceptable use policies of the platforms. I mean, I read the acceptable use policies of Parler before it went away. And there are ways that it can be used. You turn over the data to the law enforcement. If you violate, if you say harassment, etc., there's multiple things that will kick you off the platform. But if nobody's reporting them, then they'll just keep going on. So this is something that could be done. And in terms of getting the resources to do it, you could get, some of these, Pfizer or whatever to do it, because the government doesn't want to do it because they're like, oh, well, maybe it's free speech or whatever. And what we saw with the Dominion voting systems, people are like, wow, that's what it finally did to take them down, to shut them up. Okay. So let's utilize that. Now, I don't know what group can do this. I've talked to a couple of friends of mine, but it is, I think sometimes on the left, we throw up our hands about, oh, well, the answer to speech you don't like is more speech. And it's like, yeah, but it's also, figuring out a way so that if they're, threatening people, causing harm, there's lots of different ways, particularly in the medical area, that could be shut down. And frankly, I think that this is something that didn't happen because Trump was president, but now needs to change, especially now. And I don't know if you saw this, but there was a report, Lori Garrett put it out. It was a report, 1/3 of the people who had COVID in this study of 253,000 people had neurological or mental health issues from COVID. And I was like going, but we don't see that. I mean, if 1/3 of the kids who were got COVID ended up in an iron lung, then people would like, whoa, let's avoid COVID. This is a really big deal. It's having long-term consequences.
Even then, actually, I think we'd have an issue. I know, I get what you're saying though. Well, I actually I want to go back to the Fox News point, because there's something I just thought of actually that I thought was, it's not exactly in the way, the direction we're going, but I do want to ask you this because I'm interested in your answer. How do you feel about the boycotts of people participating or going on these right-wing media outlets? Because I think I might have a position on this that's different from, a lot of the people who you would consider to be, in this world of, tracking the right. And that is, I think there are, it's one thing to get a corporation to stop funding a TV show or a radio program or a politician. It's another thing to try to take down the beast itself, one of these corporations. And while I completely, I'm supportive of the, movements to actually boycott or try to hurt Fox News or any one of these far right outlets, I do sort of think, there's a point where you have to just concede that, we keep doing these things to put the pressure on them and to make them hurt, but it's never going to defeat them, because you're dealing with someone, like you said before, a Rupert Murdoch, who's willing and able to continue to fund these things out of his own pocket with no end in sight, if it means he gets to share and spread his ideology. I do think when it gets to something like that, I feel like you do need to, and you should be open to the idea of getting on these programs or getting on these outlets, if anything, just to reach even one individual who consumes this stuff. I think it's worth it to do that. What is your feelings on those sorts of boycotts?
Well, are you thinking of anybody specifically?
Well, let's use the example that I think was really the one that caused the most debate over the past year or two, probably 2 years now. COVID really messed up my how I see time now. But if you recall, Bernie Sanders went on Fox News, and that caused a whole big uproar. He went on, and the audience was very receptive to him, and I don't think the live audience was the normal Fox News audience. I think the live audience was there to see Bernie, but the people watching at home were certainly the normal Fox News audience, and they are sitting in front of their screen watching Bernie Sanders get cheered on by people who I don't think they realize isn't the normal Fox News audience. So, if you go in knowing what you're doing, knowing what your game plan is, I think I think that's the way to actually hit them the most. Bernie not going on Fox wouldn't have done anything. Bernie going on Fox, I think it caused I think even if one person heard just one policy proposal or one idea from a Bernie Sanders and went, that's a good idea. I don't know what's so wrong with that one. I think that's completely worth it.
There's a couple of things on that one specifically, and again, when I talk to people, I say, what's the goal? It's like, in this particular case, it is, Bernie getting his message out to a bunch of people in that situation. The other person, the person I think is doing a good job going on right now on Fox is Pete Buttigieg. And he understands what's going on. He can respond back. But this brings up an issue that I know about. And you know Cliff Schecter, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Cliff Schecter. Yeah. So Cliff was one of the best spokespeople I'd ever seen when he's going to these shows. He was brilliant. He had the facts in his hand. He could have these devastating comments to his opponent on there who make them look stupid. And he was able to respond to this like that. And he had these great clips. Well, what happened? They stopped inviting him back. All right. Because they do not really want that kind of debate. They want a punching bag. They want somebody that they can and even if he was great, when they're gone, they will hang up and, and stop doing things. And I often like to joke, which is, if I was in that situation and having that conversation with somebody and I knew they were lying, I would, ask them, say, so could you tell me that again? And by the way, you're under oath. It's like, well, I'm not, no, you can lie to the press. There is no consequences for it. All right. And if you convince them that there was a lie and they changed their mind, there's nothing to stop them from turning around and repeating it after you're gone. And there's a part of me that when I was first listening to KSFO, I wanted to argue with the host. I wanted to prove them right and show that they were wrong and say, you're terrible. But here's real. And the people listening. And I realized, one, it was like going up against a professional used car salesman. I mean, this is what they do for a living, and you could maybe have this debate, but even if you won at the end or whatever, it was kind of like they still control the venue. And that's one of the big things. The reason that I went and pulled back and said, okay, I can't deal with this particular, problem there. So who can I convince? And I went above them and I went to the people whose opinion they did care about, which is the money people. And I learned this from working in Silicon Valley, working with the venture capitalists. This guy would come in and it's like, well, I'm giving you $7 million. And here, let me tell you what your marketing plan is going to be. And I know all sorts of stuff about marketing. I said, that's a terrible marketing plan. And they'd say, well, he's given us the money, so he must know. I mean, it's like when like the Tevye song from Fiddler on the Roof, when you're rich, they think you really know. So that's the way is like going, all right, I can perhaps go on and convince somebody, these kind of changes on that show, but then they're going to, keep going it for the next round. One of the ways, and I know it's incredibly difficult to think about how do we, take down Fox or whatever. Part of the problem is the rest of the mainstream media, they're not going to help us. They don't want to do it. And if you try, they'll say, well, it's a First Amendment and stuff. So it is a political organization. And the other thing that I'm thinking about, stuff that gets revealed to the insurrectionists, Fox News with the Trump organization was incredibly tight. All right. They were an arm of it. So if we could reveal the connections between the producers at Fox and the rally and Trump and saying, OK, so then we're going to go and they're going to go have the cameras ready because they're going to march on it like that. isn't Fox News complicit with that? Shouldn't they be part of the people thrown in jail for supporting an insurrection? Boy, this is going to be an interesting piece. Hannity's emails, Hannity called him regularly. What are those things? This is another part about the investigation, and the media is afraid of it. And I think Sam Sears said before, is Fox wants to be seen as, oh, we're just our sister organization. You know, ABC wants to say, yo, it's our sister organization. We'll stand up for them. They're not. All right. They are a political arm, and they're trying to get back to the Digby always likes to say, you know, Tip and Ronnie having a beer after arguing. You know, NPR and these people, they really want a reasonable GOP. They want to think that the media is not involved because they want to think that Fox is kind of like, you know, a normal organization or whatever. And they don't necessarily think about, okay, so let's expose things like the incredible sexual harassment. You know, did you see the movie Bombshell?
I have not, no.
That was a big part of it, was about figuring out internally how horrible it was. So you got Gretchen Carlson and going after the people.
Right.
And understanding it. Okay. So when you take down these organizations, it isn't necessarily just a one-shot deal. There are people who are going to want to help you for their own reasons. All right. And you can't just assume that they're, you know, doing stuff in good faith. There's a tremendous amount of stuff that's going on. I use the greed of the institutional investors, the sexual harassment lawyers are going, hey, this is a gold mine here. Okay, so every time the media start talking about activists going after, there's a little worry that they're going to come after us too, but it's a very different world. And I do think that there's things that we can do to make it so that everybody is understanding there's a thing that they can do. There's a role they can play. And some of it is involving social media. Some of it is involving writing corporations. And I really want people to say, okay, think about how Rush Limbaugh destroyed so many families, fathers, and lives like that. What would you have done if you knew you could have your father back, the guy that you knew before? What kind of actions would you have taken to get Rush off the air? I mean, there were things, and I think, you know, like they could have put him into jail for his travel to the Dominican Republic, his drug stuff, but people didn't push because he was a cash cow. So, but think about that. How many lives were destroyed that way? I think about that and how precious our relatives are and how minds have been poisoned. And what could I have done to make it so that it was stopped? Because sometimes, you know, like he was very gifted in that. So I have to go outside the venue and figure out other ways to make it that. And my choice was money, because we care about how much money people make in this country.
Right. Absolutely. And, you know, tying back to what you said earlier about the individuals who stormed the Capitol on January 6th, there is this bizarre focus on the actual people who were down there. Like, I mean, I get it. We have the physical pictures and video. It's cut and dry here. But really, you know, bar some of the individuals down there who, you know, were organized and had a game plan and had a purpose down there, barring those few individuals down there, you know, we're paying attention to the wrong people. The people who we should be focused on, and I've said this before, because I think a lot of those people who were down there were duped. Doesn't mean they're free of the consequences. I just think we're paying too much attention to them. A lot of them were duped, and we're not paying attention to the politicians and the moneyed interests who duped them, the ones who had something to gain out of it, the ones who knew what they were doing, who weren't just caught up in the moment, who weren't brainwashed, the people who did something to basically make a grift out of this or to gain power in some way or another. It seems like they're going to get away scot-free. We're going to have people who go to jail. We're going to have people who are punished, and some of them will certainly get a punishment fitting of the crime. I do think there'll probably be people who are made an example of, which are, and that it is what it is. I don't think that's necessary to some degree. But, the people who actually got them all down there and made it happen are going to get away with no punishment, no consequences whatsoever.
Right. And that's why people always say, follow the money. It's like, and I say that's actually kind of boring until something happens. Okay. And so the reason we follow these, the QAnon shaman or whatever is because it is a visual and it's interesting. And we also know that there is and I see this, well, it's like almost a hesitancy to prosecute. I mean, there's a part of me that really wants to be a prosecutor, go after people and make them pay. One of my favorite shows was Leverage. And I liked it because they understood that you can't always do just one type of thing. And the legal system doesn't always get you justice. And you have to figure out other ways that are, the satisfactory. And so, but the legal system and the civil lawsuit system, you can't get them for criminal. Then you get them on something that they really care about, which is their money. Now, of course, they will turn around and sue you and go after you because that's, how they think. And that's one of the things you notice about, Trump on the, well, we're going to boycott Coke and we're going to, just using, threats, not understanding the, the subtleties of the group going to Major League Baseball and say, your values are not, anti-democratic, right? So you're not going to want to, support this. Whereas Trump's is like, he just, I'm going to hold money over your head. I'm going to take money away unless you do what I want, like he did with the PM of Ukraine. So what I was thinking about was, okay, so, and I lost my train of thought. So, because I was...
That's all good. Listen, it happens all the time. No, but
yeah.
The idea though that and let me get back to another point you made earlier. While we're off that thought.
Oh,
go ahead. Well,
go ahead. I know. It was like how to then get the people who are the organizers and the money people. Okay, so when you find out, the Proud Boys or the two guys who sprayed the bear spray that ended up killing Sicknick. Okay, you find out those people and you find them, and then you link them to the congressman. You link them to Fox News. You link them to the those people. That's the way that happens, and they're going to use all of their resources and legal resources to cut away from it, and they're going to try and spin it. And it was this, and I didn't know this. That's why we have to keep looking for evidence and truth, and evidence is like that. That will be one of the keys. And it was kind of weak, but this is perhaps one of the things that Eric Garland's DOJ might be coming up. And we want to say when people are criminals, we prosecute them. It doesn't make any difference if they're politicians or not. They just, we prosecute criminals, right? We're not going after our enemies. Our political rivals are not enemies. That's a Biden. He falls into that. So I have to make sure people know we're not the Trump people. We are going after people who have committed crimes. So that is the thing that I'm hoping to do, is say, all right, once we spot those, here's what you do. You don't just say, oh, well, Andy Biggs from Arizona. You say, hey, he just got linked to the guy who killed the cop. You are giving him money. Are you sure you want to keep doing that, corporation? That's a pain. He might still get more voters, but he's not going to get any more money. All right. And so those are the kinds of things. And again, I'm trying to think 3 steps ahead. And I don't know if there's any Democrats who are out there doing it, but whoever's running against Andy Biggs should be doing that, thinking that way. to say,
Right.
this is how we take them out. We take them out by tainting their brand. All right. So with the people who care about, those things. I mean,
right. That's the big addendum there, because I was going to say, for a lot of these far right Republicans, their brand is the far right of the party, the QAnon
right.
believers, the Proud Boys. So, with that addendum that taint their brand with their corporate, overlords, the ones who are funding their campaigns, the ones who are giving them the money to actually run.
Right.
Now,
And that's why a lot of times turn to dark money too. It's kind of like, hey,
right.
corporate customer facing corporations are in much more difficult position. And I have friends and relatives who work in, corporation social media side. All right. They're looking at this stuff. Oh, we got to make sure the brand doesn't do this or that. Pepsi came out with a Pepsi Mango. Maybe they're trying to get the, anti-Coke vote. There's like, ooh, this is, thank you for laughing. That was, I really, so what do you pay attention to? Is like, okay, you have all of these different people who are trying to get and, stay associated with the, disassociate with the bad guys. And you want to make sure that you link the bad guys to their funding source and say, hey, stop the money coming in if you don't like this.
Now, you also mentioned earlier, I feel like I keep going back to what you said earlier, but this is one of those interviews where when you're on a roll, I got to let you go, because otherwise I don't want to ruin the flow. So I'm going back to a few things that stuck with me. You mentioned how, the press, we talked about, obviously, the different aspects that come into play here, and how these guys, how Fox News and the Rupert Murdochs get away with what they do. And one of the people who one of the outlets that give them the runway to get away with this stuff is the rest of the press. And I think there's twofold here, and I want to know if you sort of agree with this. Number one is, I feel like there's a large part of the mainstream press that I don't know. I do not know how, after literally decades of this going on, but a large portion of the mainstream press just does not understand the game being played here. It just baffles me that, some of these, NBC News reporters and New York Times reporters just do not get it after I don't even know how many years of this, this strategy being deployed by the right. They just are completely out of their element. That's one. But there's another thing I see where, like,
could you be more specific? I like that question, but I understand what is it that they're not getting?
Like how Chuck Todd has these right wing Republican Congresspeople on his show week after week, just filling them up. Never anyone from the when did you see someone from like the Progressive Caucus on his show? But every week we have the same crew of far right Republicans. And he just lets them pretty much, for the most part, say what they say and no pushback. It's like they don't get, like, like you mentioned how they don't want to, like, censor them or step on their toes. You're having them on your show. That's proof that you're not censoring them. Do your job, though, and do the other part of the discussion. Now, obviously, one can say that Chuck Todd is doing his job by not pushing back, and I agree to some extent. But for my point here of the mainstream media just not getting, what the right does, I feel like that's part of it. They're in this denial mode because they have this fetish of trying to come across as neutral when. And for some reason, they think that just sitting there and letting one side say one thing and the other side saying the other, that's some sort of neutrality there is just bullshit in and of itself to me. They think that, like, the truth lies somewhere in the middle, and that's just not the case. If someone says, the sky is green, and the other one says the sky is blue. The truth is not somewhere in the middle. The truth is there. You can see what color the sky is. You know what I mean? But the other thing I think too is, we've been seeing, like, even on, like, what a lot of, like, Democrats and liberals view as their news channel, like MSNBC, like the takeover of even, like, the right there. Like, we have, and you're someone who's been around for a long time, so I'm sure this frustrates you seeing some of these folks. MSNBC is pretty much all their, like some of their, I don't want to say all, but a majority of their biggest pundits now are like former Bush administration officials. Like, what the hell is going on? Like, the entire industry has just gone right wing. Like, sure, they're not the, they're not the ones out there saying, Trump is fighting a secret satanic cabal of child trafficking pedophiles in Hollywood and in the Democratic Party, but they are the ones who lied about the war in Iraq. Like, we're expecting these guys to push against this stuff. Like that's why I think a lot of this stuff is getting into this point, because even like the other side, quote unquote, or at least the way mainstream media presents the other side, is not really the other side. So the far right is able to just, say what they say. And the other side, quote unquote, is just like, oh, that's not very couth. We're not that Republicans. We're the more like, we're the Reagan Republicans, the respectable Republicans.
Right. This is the Lincoln Project. This is, and Bill Kristol. And, whenever I see bloody Bill Kristol on, I just like, ugh. And Mrs. Spocko goes, I know you hate him, but I think this is one of the things that, and I see somebody says, I can't stand MSNBC sometimes when they do this. There is a way that the media and there is no supposedly left wing, what do they call it? Supposedly liberal media. One of the ways is that they're, the refs have been constantly hammered, on that. So they try and, present the reasonable Republican that they really want. Okay. They want the people who are, not the insane Republicans. And so you've got the Lincoln Project show up. Okay. And they say, oh, I'm the good old, drowned in a bathtub Republican who, hates, right. Big taxes. I'm not the let's storm the Capitol Republican, okay? And those Republicans, those are the corporate ones. That's what the corporate people want to see. They don't want to believe that they still want to believe that that's the way the Republicans are, okay? And
but
Biden
doesn't my point here too, and not to interrupt you, but my point here too is that like, doesn't this go against exactly what like activists like yourself try to do? Because, these big brands that you're talking about who can be used as a tool to fight back against the right, they still think, because they're not tuned into our political bubble like we are, but they still think when they're advertising on these networks, they still think, oh, that old school Republican, my grandpa was that type of Republican. They're still out there. They still got to be the majority. No way the whole Republican Party went so far right. I mean, we're talking about something that happened decades ago. Like when like Newt Gingrich was in Congress. Like I'm not just talking about like when QAnon became the big thing on the GOP. No. This far right version of the Republican Party has been there since the Reagan era. But for some reason, because of these old school Republicans who get all these jobs in the the so-called liberal media, these big brands that you hope would wake up to this stuff and be able to financially hurt these companies and these outlets, they can't do it because they think, thanks to MSNBC and these other so-called liberal media organizations, they think the Republican Party is still the Lincoln Project and shit like that. It's just, that's sort of what I'm getting at here.
Yeah, that's a great point, an excellent point. I'm always trying to like think of solutions and, ways to do this. And again, like I said, I sometimes go small and figure out how to do it. I knew, like I talked about Cliff, it's all with those things. He's not going to show up there. So what does he have to do? He's got to, do his own, podcast stuff. And I talked to Digby about this in terms of, the interesting thing about the Lincoln Project is there's on the left, there is also, I think, an anti, there's still a kind of, money's bad and we don't want to make money. And if we make too much money, we're bad. But the Lincoln Project's like, hey, we're going to make millions. And then afterwards, they got attacked for it. And I saw that coming. But in terms of, you're talking about Chuck Todd and those kind of messages. One of the reasons they have those people on is because they are trained, and some are better than others. And I know this because I train people. I've only trained a few politicians, but they are actually very clever. And there's multiple methods that can be done in order to figure out how to not answer questions. I mean, occasionally you'll see somebody do a really bad job of training them. And, some of the people that are then, if you've got a good reporter who can, deal with it, then bust them. It's possible, but they don't, because I want you to come on next week. Okay. And so they go into this. So, and I actually, I've written about this sometimes, but one of the ways that I thought was fairly powerful is if you're an activist group, and if you're somebody like, Indivisible, and I work with an incredible group in Nebraska called Nebraskans Against Gun Violence. And I worked with a couple of the people there at a town hall, and we created a team of people to go to do a town hall Q&A. It's not just one person. You have to have kind of an environment that you not only prepare for the question, you prepare for the politician's response, and you prepare for their first response and then their second response. And you prepare for a follow-up, because the press isn't going to do the follow-up, and the politicians, they're controlling these town halls or online things. They don't want to do follow-ups either, because if you do, you find out that they don't really have a good answer. So because I understand the tricks on both sides, I work with this woman to ask one of the people, was Deb Fisher, and she was a senator for Nebraska. And she voted for a bill that allowed people who didn't have enough mental faculties to do their own checking account to get guns. Okay. And so my friend of mine, she went there and spoke and asked a question. Why did you vote for this? All right. Now, we did research in advance, and we found out that she was going to give this BS answer that, well, the ACLU also supported this, like that. But she had a follow-up to the answer, and then another question. And we were able to basically get her into, Deb Fisher, into a humana kind of, who's the next questioner? I don't want to talk to you anymore kind of thing. That kind of thing can be done because you could be the press. You don't have the same kind of things, but you have to understand politicians are tricky. They have lots of training, and you need to understand the various different methods to do it. And what is your goal? To get a soundbite of them looking stupid, to get them a soundbite like the change like that. That might be the best you can do. That's one of the reasons I also like the Indivisible people. Is like, okay, so you've done stuff, you set up a media event, you've asked them a question, but then what? After they've screwed up, the general mainstream media always gives people another bite at the apple. They go back later and ask, well, this happened. So this is the thing. I work with activists. I tell them, if you're going to go, always be videotaping yourself. Make sure that if there's some kind of media that covers you and that you talk to them, follow up with the media afterwards. Give them your name and information, because they're going to go to the police and they're going to talk to the police information officer about the Black Lives Matter riot. And they're going to say, well, it wasn't that, the crowd came after us, etc. Well, if you call the media and say, what did the police information people say? Oh, they said that we started it. Could you look at the video? I mean, you shot the video and they started it. And, it's like getting the last word. And I've trained a couple of people on that technique, but it's because the press is stuck into this, one side, the other, and they'll go the official spokesperson and then they're done.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And that again, I'm, trying to help people who are out there being activists and doing the way that you can figure out, not just to, win the argument, but actually do something that's going to be, because you made them look bad or did whatever, that they're going to have to change their position, or it's going to impact them some other way.
Right. Right. I remember who I was thinking of too, as I went on my rant about, the mainstream liberal media. I still can't believe Nicole Wallace is like the main MSNBC pundit now. Like, it's amazing to me. It just really, doesn't that really bother you? I mean, it really gets me every time. Um, Spocko, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Oh, first I want to make sure. Did we hit up? I think we did. Did we hit up? Because you came in with a beautiful like itinerary or the lesson plan, like your entire. I think we hit everything, right?
I hope so. If there's anybody in the chat, if there's something that that you want to ask or something like that, I'm available for questions right now. And follow me on Twitter. I'm Spocko's Brain. Okay. If you have something like that, because I wrote something on Crooks and Liars recently about how to find out who your congressperson is and whether or not corporations are giving. It's called 6 Steps to Defund the GOP Seditionists. All right, that's one thing. My blog, if you click on the thing, I have a couple things. Most recently, working on Louis DeJoy and some of the horrible things that he's done. I work with Lisa Graves, who is the board chairman of the Center for Media Democracy, and she had a great testimony where she talked about all the horrible things that Louis DeJoy did, including, which I love this one, hid his brother's mail from him for years so that he could hide millions of dollars from the family money. I was like that, the family business. I was just like, it's hysterical.
Well, that's why he got the job. That's perfect, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
he has the experience, right, to do what needed to be done.
Right. So you can, and Lisa's working on some more stuff right now. Lisa Graves is working on the Supreme Court and how the Supreme Court has been corrupted by money. All right. And how the big money is done. So those are the other things, which is finding out other ways that you can say, all right, here's an area that we do the research and we find what's the news hook about that? It's like, figure it out. Here it is. And here's what an activist can do to make it so that people know about it. And then what do I hope happens? Well, we hope that Louis DeJoy gets fired by the postal board, and that's not going to happen until we get enough people put on the postal board, new ones for Biden. I mean, it's like there's so many steps, but you want to start, with something that catches people's attention.
Right.
So
Spocko, where can people follow you online? I want to make sure, because I'm getting a lot of great chat comments. I'm sure you'll want to jump in the chat, like you said, after, because people are saying a lot of positive things about this interview, and they really thought it was really great. So where can people follow you online so they can keep track with it?
My blog is spockosbrain.com, based on the classic episodes, A Piece of the Action and Spock's Brain. And then I also write for Hullabaloo, Digby's Hullabaloo, and Crooks and Liars. My Twitter handle is at Spocko's Brain. And please follow me. If I don't follow you back, it's because I reached the follow limit, because I like to follow people, and it's embarrassing to me that I have so few followers. I mean, it's just it's tragic. Most of my followers are because I do a really funny joke. So because that's my what can I come up with a great joke about we hate Boy George bands, cancel culture club. I mean, those are the kind of things that people follow you for, not because of your brilliant analysis of costing, right-wing media hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. And, you're going to see this, watch the TV news cover the thing about corporations. They'll turn it into he said, she said, and boycotts on one side versus the other. It's not, and thank you, Matt, for giving me the opportunity to make it clear what this is and isn't. And, a shout out to everybody who's ever, picked up an email and done some activism work, because it makes a difference. It really does.
Thanks a lot for joining us tonight, Spocko. I'd love to have you on again in the future. Have a great night.
All right. Thanks so much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is not the end of the show, because I have to say that right off the bat, because I know that there are a bunch of new viewers right now on Twitch, because it seems like we were rated by, what was it, Jordan's TYT show? Is that where you guys came from? I can, if you're not familiar, I stream Thursday nights, and when I stream, I do the old the multi-streaming on. So I'm streaming at the same time on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter. Now, most of my audience is on YouTube, but I think Twitch is growing here and there. We had like over 100 Twitch viewers on before, and I'll tell you, that's like, that would be low YouTube numbers, but for Twitch, where I haven't really spent that much time building up. Welcome, Twitch people. I hope you followed me on Twitch, twitch.tv/MattBinder if you're not already there. Stick around, though, because there's a lot more show. I'm just going to, first of all, let me pull myself up on the feed here, because all you need now is just my wonderful face, because Spocko is no longer on the call. That was a really great interview. He had called in as just a listener a couple months ago. And I had to stop him because he was giving this information as just like a throwaway after a long interview. And listen, I could not do 2 long interviews in a row. So I didn't want to lose the opportunity to ask him some good questions. So I had to regroup, invite him back on, and we did it this time around. But anyway, we're going to go to the second half of the show. If you're watching live, don't go anywhere. You get the second half of the show for free. You could stick around and watch it. Otherwise, become a patron. Patreon.com/MattBinder. Received a slew of new patrons randomly throughout the week, which was interesting. Usually, I do an episode, get a bunch of new patrons, and then Patreon's kind of quiet until the next live stream. But for some reason, I got to find out why. If you joined the Patreon over this past week, please tell me where you discovered the show. Patreon.com/MattBinder. I'm going to shout out our new patron subscribers who joined since the last episode on April 1st. Let's get right to it. Sarah A., Martin, Peter R., Darian M., Eufeo Answer, Nicola E., Matt with 1 T, Sherna P., Wayne T., Lawrence T. A lot of people with the last initial T today. Thank you so much for becoming patrons. Let me know how you found the show, or what made you decide to become a patron. And folks, if you're watching right now and you want to become a patron, it's not too late. You'll get a shout out on this episode, and you'll get a shout out on the next episode. That's right. If you become a patron during the show, I shout you out twice. Just because I want to make sure I don't miss anybody who becomes a patron. Also, if you're on the YouTube live stream, you could drop a one-off donation via the Super Chat. YouTube.com/MattBinder. Subscribe to the show, or if you're in the chat, just tap that Super Chat button and give me whatever you'd like. People give as little as 99 cents. I've received as much as what's the most I received? I think someone once gave like $100, maybe $50, something like that. You don't gotta give that, but there you go. Twitch.tv/MattBinder. I am on Twitter, Instagram, etc. @MattBinder, or just search Matt Binder. What else? DoomedPod.com. DoomedPod.com for the podcast version of the show. I take the live stream, turn it into an audio only show for people who prefer listening to podcasts. And there you go, DoomedPod.com. And on that site, you can find the show on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, etc., etc. If you feel so inclined, leave a review on Apple Podcasts/iTunes. It takes just a few seconds. Tap those stars. You can also leave a written review. I love seeing those written reviews if you can leave them. Oh, by the way, I read the Super Chats. The Super Chats for sure get read. I try to read other comments too, but the Super Chats for sure get read. What else? Oh, a few people have been requesting that I open up the YouTube membership thing. I actually looked into doing that after promising for weeks I would, but I actually did it this time. But it's not live yet because they make you set up a lot. I gotta look through it. Also, apparently, I could give you guys custom emojis if you become a member on the YouTube channel. That seems pretty cool. I got to take the time to get them made. All right. Oh yeah. Definitely subscribe to the YouTube because I started posting almost daily content, basically clips from the live stream, but also I'll be doing more YouTube exclusive clips, edited, well put together video, essays, I guess is what the YouTubers call them. Like the Boogaloo Boy Jimmy Dore video I did. I got a lot of good reviews there. The Surfs and Vosh all watched it on their own super popular Twitch channels and had nice things to say about it. I got more where that comes from. A few interesting ones I'm working on now, actually. So definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel for those. All right, folks. We're going to go to the second half of the show. Again, if you're watching live, stick around. You don't got to do anything. I'm just going to take a quick, 30-second break. Got some really great clips to show you. You guys will not want to miss this. We got a secret footage of Ben Shapiro. He did not realize that his webcam was still on after his live show for his Daily Wire audience today, and it is amazing. You will not believe what I got for you guys today. Also, a amazing trailer for a Republican of a right-wing event coming up in Texas that its organizers swear is not a QAnon event, which happens to feature a sitting Republican congressman and the head of an entire state's Republican Party. They swear it's not a QAnon event. We'll watch this trailer and decide. Hint, it's a QAnon event. That and much, much more coming up. Stick around if you are live. Everybody else, I will see you all next time on Doomed. All right, we are back, and let me. We don't need this anymore. You know who I am. I'm gonna take away this little name tag I put there. I'm gonna get I'm starting to. For this live stream, I'm gonna start building it out nicer. There's gonna be overlays soon. I'm gonna have nice little chyrons for nicer than that, but it will be chyrons. I'm really trying to get the live stream presentation put together in a nicer way. But anyway, let's get right to this Ben Shapiro clip. And it is perfect for an episode about cancel culture and boycotts and everything in between. Let me give you a little tease first of what we're going to see, because it is fantastic. Here we go.
It is a funny bit, but that's why I'll get boycotted.
That's why I'll get boycotted. Ladies and gentlemen, what you just saw is a tease of a full clip I'm about to show you. Basically, the online equivalent, the online live stream equivalent, I should say, of a hot mic. And it was caught none other than Ben Shapiro. Now, Ben Shapiro was doing a live stream version of his very popular podcast, live radio program. It's got a video element. He's got the whole shebang. He's like one of the biggest broadcasters today. He's got a super successful podcast, and there's a live stream version of the show that airs and for his audience on Daily Wire. No one. I can't think of who is bigger than Ben Shapiro, especially now that Rush Limbaugh is no longer with us on the right. And so today he's doing his program for the Daily Wire audience, and he thinks the show is over. He thinks the camera has cut, the mic is off. Ben Shapiro, that is not what happened. You were still on air, my friend, and this is what you told the world.
Producer Jessica. So, we are indeed done here today. I have an appointment I got to get to. Thank you, guys. It's great to see you, and I will see you here next time. One thing on that episode, I said pansexualism is weird. Can we just cut that?
I can ask.
I just want to make sure you hear that. The audio is a little bit low. I'll fix it in post for the podcast, but and for the clip. But can you cut that? He says about a comment he made about pansexualism being weird. That's bizarre. This is a guy who's made his career off of being the conservative firebrand, right? Why is he upset about this comment? Let's continue to hear what Ben Shapiro has to say when he thinks the cameras are off.
That'd be great.
I watched the show right now this morning. Just getting pissed. That I don't know.
Before it's like immediately reposted on the site.
It's not. It's just Daily Wire.
Right, it's just Daily Wire. So
Before it's reposted.
yeah,
we could.
It's like a 10-second bit. It's about halfway through. It's just on pansexual. I'm like, that's kind of weird. Like you like everything. Like
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, just like
You want to get rid of that?
yeah, it's just like it's nothing, but
So
they'll
when
make it
you
something.
when you
I mean, it is
finish,
weird that you are attracted to every single thing.
Yeah.
Wait, when you
No
finish-
taste at all.
I thought that was.
Look, the producer realizes he's still on the air here. Now, this has got to be detrimental for this guy here. It's got to be detrimental for this guy. Pansexualism is weird. He said that. Listen, again, whether you were edgy and think that's fine, or whether you think that's no big deal, or whether you are, someone who thinks saying that is offensive. That's not the discussion here. This is Ben Shapiro, the guy who has an opinion on transgender people, on the LGBTQ community, on feminism, on anything and everything in the social justice sphere. But pansexualism is weird, is what he's bothered by here. He didn't mean to say that comment. Why is that? Again, I gave you the tease and you heard it already. But let's hear what he's got. Let's actually rewind a little bit, because this is just too much. And please pay attention to that producer realizing that they're still on the air. It is hilarious.
It is weird that you are attracted to every single thing.
Wait, when
no
you finish-
taste at all.
I thought that was a funny bit.
It is a funny bit, but that's why I'll get boycotted.
That's why I'll get boycotted. I want you to understand here. That's why I'm going to keep me actually right here with that Ben Shapiro and his producer realizing that that the camera was still live while I talk to you. Now, these guys, these conservative pundits, these right-wing personalities, they'll tell you that this is cancel culture, and they'll tell you this is a free speech issue, and no, but this is why they tell you these things, because they live in fear of the boycotts, of any sort of pressure for there to be some consequence to what they say. They'll turn it into some big heroic stand, and they'll say that they're trying to be canceled. But, when it comes down to it, they realize this affects them, especially someone like Ben Shapiro, who's one of the more mainstream conservatives. Fearing the idea that big pansexual is going to come after him. Hilarious. The free speech warriors over here being censored by themselves because they fear big pansexual. Ooh. Oh boy. And while we're here, while we're doing clips, let's get to this QAnon. Let's get to this. All right, let's get to this. I'm not gonna say it's QAnon yet because I want you guys to be the judge. Hold on, let me pull this up here. So, there's this Republican event being organized in Texas. It's called the God and Country Patriots Roundup. And boy, do they have a lineup for this Republican event. You got sitting congressmen like Representative Louis Gohmert. You got the chairman of the Texas GOP, Alan West. You got an assortment, and you'll see the trailer who's on here. An assortment of different Republican pundits, right-wing figures. And they put out this trailer for this event. And it's littered with references to QAnon. Now, you might be thinking, why is that a big deal? Well, it's a big deal because they're claiming, the organizers of this event are claiming, this event has nothing to do with QAnon. Now, why would they want to disassociate from QAnon? Well, January 6th, the storming of the Capitol. It is completely tainted. The name QAnon, in fact, even before that, Q himself, the anonymous figure that QAnon believers follow, Q told his followers, stop referencing QAnon. He realized, at the very least, they realized that the QAnon brand is tainted for the more mainstream audience. You can't have a sitting Congress member and the head of a state Republican party headline a QAnon event after you had the QAnon shaman storming the Capitol with 5 people dying that day. But they know just how much of their base are QAnon believers. So what do? They say it's not a QAnon event. No way, no how. But then they just so blatantly drop QAnon references in this trailer. And by the way, one funny thing about this too is that the organizer's name, he goes by the name QAnon John. But anyway, if that wasn't enough, let's check out this trailer. And let's go through it slowly. Let's see if we can catch all the QAnon references here. For this event that they swear to God up and down, no way is this a QAnon event. Let's watch the trailer together. Patriot Roundup. Let's do this, Dallas. Do you guys see that there? I caught it perfectly, just in time. Do you guys see that? Now, it's just blinking really quickly on the screen. I just happened to press pause perfectly. I thought I'd have to go back and scrub back and forth a little bit. I mean, it doesn't get any more bland than that, does it? Where does the letter Q come into play for an event called For God and Country Patriot Roundup? Well, there you go. Blinking on the screen, the letter Q multiple times. Let's continue. Oh, right there too. That is a phrase the QAnon faithful love, absolutely adore, because they believe that everything is part of Donald Trump's plan. The idea, the whole basis of QAnon is that Donald Trump is secretly waging a war against a global cabal of satanic pedophile child traffickers who are members of the Hollywood elite and Democratic Party. And, these people also eat babies in order to gain the fountain of youth via adrenochrome in baby blood. This is what they believe completely, 100%. I'm not lying to you. You guys, regular viewers of the show, know that this is what they believe because I talk about it every episode. But because they believe this, and they also believe that every single thing that happens is all part of Trump's 200-dimensional chess, they always say, sit back and enjoy the show. But let's continue. Another one right there. Pepe Anand's 17 whiskey right there. I'm in the way. Let me move out of the way. For those of you who don't know, 17 is a really big figure within the QAnon, a really big number, I should say, within the QAnon movement. And if you want to know why 17, think to yourself what the 17th letter of the alphabet is. Here's a hint. It's Q. I mean, it's a QAnon event if Michael Flynn is your headliner right there, right? I mean, the guy is probably the most high-profile person who videotaped himself and his entire family taking that QAnon pledge last year. Let's continue. I mean, come on. Sidney Powell, probably one of the biggest promoters of Trump's big lie about the election being stolen from him, which, again, by the way, the groundwork was all laid down there. Well, not all, but with a big, huge assist from QAnon. We got a number of big right-wing, far right-wing pundits coming up. A number of them who've been pushing QAnon, and if not explicitly, have certainly endorsed a number of QAnon conspiracy theories. Wayne the George Papadopoulos. I mean, come on. We got Evan Sayet, Juanita Broderick, who, is probably the most sympathetic figure the only sympathetic figure on this lineup here. In some ways, or form, I should say. I mean, she's certainly done as much possible to lose all of that sympathy. But, in terms of being someone who had something horrible done to her, yeah. There's Louis Gohmert, baby. Sitting congressman. And here's Alan West, head of the Republican Party in Texas. I mean, come on. Jordan Sather. Kate Awakening. We're talking about literal names who are QAnon influencers. I mean, these are folks who have made a name specifically off of analyzing Q's drops. Now we just got some more names here. And I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Let's see. Incredible speakers. There's a few more things I think. Let's see there. The Awesome Entertainment. JT Wild. DJ Jeff Rush. Let's do this. All Patriots welcome. Here we go. Here's another QAnon reference. Patriots in control. Another one of their favorite phrases because, they believe that Joe Biden really isn't the president of the United States. Donald Trump is really pulling the strings as some sort of shadow president, in some underground bunker controlling the military. And, trust the plan, folks. That's the Forgotten Country Patriot Roundup. Now, you guys tell me, what do you think? Is this a QAnon event, or is this it's just a Republican event that has nothing to do with QAnon whatsoever? Just happened to be organized by a guy who goes by the name QAnon John. Why don't you tell me in the comments below? All right, folks. Let's go to the super chats. Bum, 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 bum. Ooh, we got a Patreon during that segment. A patron, I should say, during that segment. Thank you for joining us on the Patreon. Counting Amberjacks. Really appreciate the support. What happened to the... oh, man, I got to open up. All the super chats disappeared on YouTube. 1 second. There's another area where I can view just all the super chats. Let me open that up. Give me 1 second. Bum, 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 bum. Here we are. Tim Bob with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Tim Bob. Spocko mentioned San Francisco's best kept secret. If any of you visit San Francisco after things are safe, go see Beach Blanket Babylon. Huzzah! I have no idea what that is. Beach Blanket Babylon. I've been to the West Coast once. I got no idea what that is. If it's something that you say I should check out, and Spocko gave it a thumbs up, then for sure. Renee with a super chat. Okay, Sacco should be Matt's Arapacos regular, like his Michael. Well, no one's gonna be my Michael, but Sacco was great. Spocko, I should say. Spocko. You called him Sacco, I just realized. Spocko was great. He is not Mick Foley's sock puppet. Sacco. Wrestling reference. Lived it with a $5 super chat. Sup, Matt? Stay in the fight. Cool stream earlier on the Minority Report. You mean the Majority Report. Thank you. Yeah, I was on the Majority Report earlier, as I am for my regular Thursday residency with Brandon Sutton of The Discourse, and obviously Emma Vigilant, co-host of the Majority Report. And, of course, the Majority Report crew, Matt Leck and Brendan Finn. And this reminded me, actually. What are you talking about, Grim? Regular listener Grim in the YouTube chat was talking earlier. Where does this come from? What you said about Emma? She is anti-Antifa? I don't think so. Where did you get that from? Emma's great, but I would love to know what you're talking about, so I could give her some hard times about whatever you're referencing. I don't think she's anti-Antifa though. Come on. Go back to the super chats while we wait for I want to hear from Grim. Samantha Sider with a super chat. Great interview with Spocko. Very informative. Why, thank you, Samantha. Imseti with a huge $10 super chat. Stay frosty. Super chat, stay frosty. Thanks for putting the RP Daisy Dukes Ron Paul Daisy Dukes on my timeline earlier today. I can't just not give the live stream viewers that. So apparently, Ron Paul apparently, oh my God, where is this? I gotta show you guys this. Apparently, Ron Paul was caught on a live stream show or something. Like he was doing like a radio hit or a live stream hit, something. And I guess he thought the camera was cropped from the waist up. And so he was wearing, oh, I still have the, let me pull myself up here. So he was wearing he was wearing short shorts. Unbelievable here. Unbelievable. Now listen, I got no problem with short shorts. You wear whatever you want. In fact, I wear shorts above the knee. I wear tight jean shorts during the summer. You know, got my like crusty punk, you know, cyclist look going on during the summer with my short, tight jeans. But I ain't wearing Daisy Dukes. And I'm certainly not Ron Paul. Who wears short shorts? Peter Low Frequency with a $10 super chat. Speaking of doom, Sleep has a 63-minute song called Dope Smoker. It's about weed. Why, thank you for that, Peter Low Frequency. 63-minute long song. Jeez. That's even longer than that NoFX, that long NoFX song that I'm having a mental block right now and I can't remember the name of. What the hell is that song called again? The Decline. The Decline. Right. That's like a, what is it? Like a 20-minute song, right? Let's go back to the super chats here. Renee says he relies on that few people are aware of sophistry. Are you talking about Ben Shapiro, I guess? Logan with a super chat. Any thoughts on Alex Jones stopping child trafficking by standing in front of a van with his entire crew? Right, yeah. I'm sure that was legit, right? I have to look further into that one, actually, Logan. I know exactly what you're talking about. Saw the clip. Didn't get around to looking into it, to be honest with you. Oh, Grim got back to me. Here we go. Let's see what Grim has to say. Where is it? Go watch her footage from TYT in 2017. What did she say? What did she say, though? You're not telling me, Grim. What are you claiming that Emma said about Antifa in 2017? Pyro314 says, someone super chat a question about the HBO doc because Matt has probably heard all of its information, even if he hasn't watched it yet. I've had a few requests, actually, to talk about the QAnon HBO documentary. I actually have not watched it all yet. I will say I did watch the first episode so far. I thought it was very good. I think my one criticism is that it's being presented a little bit in a confusing manner, but that's not really the fault of the documentary. I mean, they could have figured out a way to slightly lay it out for lay people in a better way, I guess. But it is very confusing, period. I mean, that's what some of the requests I've received have been. Like, hey, I'm watching this QAnon documentary. It's riveting, but it's confusing. I don't really understand some of these things that they're talking about and the timeline and what's going on. I mean, that's not good if that's what if that's what you're feeling that way about the documentary, honestly. But I do think it's from my perspective, I do think it's good so far. I gotta watch the rest of it and then I'll do an episode on it. I'm familiar with everything that I've seen so far. Um, I have seen the big reveal that happens at the end of the last episode. Uh, I think it's being sold a little bit too much. I mean, yeah. I mean, watching Ron Watkins in just the first episode, he's really bad poker face. He's a really bad liar. Like, just in that first episode, I'm like, this guy's hiding something. He knows, or he is. I mean, I know people have claimed it's the Jim Watkins or Ron Watkins or both of them, father, son, or the team together, or RQ. It makes total sense, but there hasn't been that smoking gun. I don't know if there'll ever be a smoking gun. Ron Watkins sort of giving it away in the end of that last episode. I guess it's the closest we'll ever get to a smoking gun, possibly. But it's still not that smoking gun, though. And that's why I think it's being oversold a little bit, even though it is sort of a big reveal. It could be both, I think, if you catch my drift. I don't... let me watch the rest of the documentary, and we'll do a whole episode on it. Unfortunately, can't watch it with you guys because it's like an HBO documentary. It would not pass just even a few minutes of the copyright moderations on YouTube. The episode would be taken down immediately. The stream would be taken down immediately. But I will say, I'm enjoying it. The first episode was well done. You can tell the first episode is really early on in Q, in the birth of the timeline of Q, because it is, and he's admitted it himself, I think, the director, it is sort of lighthearted so far. Not lighthearted like haha, but it's like, look at these weirdos. This is bizarre. It's not. We're not at the point in the documentary where they're in the QAnon. We're not at the point in the QAnon timeline in the documentary yet, from that first episode at least, where QAnon needs to be taken as serious as it ends up needing to be taken. So I think it's done well so far in that first episode. Ryan says, pretty sure you can do movie showings on Discord. I don't know if I want to test any copyright issues, And I don't know if we're going to do a 6-hour stream. I guess we could break it up. Zoe says, do a private Patreon screening. I don't have HBO. I'll think about it. I don't know if I want to test it. I would have to find a platform to do it on. I don't want this channel taken down. I really don't. It's been hard work just to get to the subscriber base we're at, to get monetized, to be able to accept super chats and have ads shown on in the videos. I don't want to test it, guys. Well, let me see if I can find a platform to do it. Maybe we can, this wouldn't help the Zoes who don't have HBO, but maybe we can do it where we all watched it at the same time or something, and the only our, us on screen talking will be part of the stream. I don't know. We'll figure it out. I will say this. I did recently, using the patron funds that you guys give me, always putting that towards the show. I did recently purchase a lifetime subscription to a program where I think we can do some cool, fun like hangouts. I gotta test it out. The purpose of purchasing it was to basically be able to do patron only streams. I would obviously only give patrons the invite link, where we would literally all be on screen, and there's some cool, fun little interactive things in this software. I got to test it out, and then we'll do it, Because that's right, patrons. We will be doing more patron-only bonuses. It's coming soon. Thinking of you guys all the time. And I would extend that to when I get the YouTube memberships going. I would extend that to the YouTube members too, if you want to become a YouTube member. There'll be benefits to doing both, though. Obviously, I can't give the YouTube emoji custom emojis to patrons, but at the same time there'll be patron bonuses like the audio podcast bonuses that I can't give to YouTubers. So you have to pick which one you prefer, or if you can do both. Yeah, I'll try to figure out how to make everyone happy though. What else? Let's go back to the super chats. Got some more super chats coming in here. Kowalski with a $10 super chat. Thank you, Kowalski. Got my first COVID shot today. No side effects other than a sore arm. Decent number of people getting their shots wearing cowboy hats, MAGA hats, and a few long-haired friends of Jesus. That's a good sign. If you got people wearing MAGA gear getting those shots, it's a good sign. I do think we're going to come to a point though where the anti-vaxxer propaganda will really take hold, and we're going to have a problem. Like we're going to hit like a peak where everyone who's gotten a shot who wants a shot, everyone who wants a shot has gotten it. And the push will be those millions of people who are just going to flat out refuse, and it's going to be a problem. And, I think we're going to hit that point, and that's when we're going to have a problem. But it's a good sign though, Kowalski. Thanks for letting me know that. Ryan says, all I'm saying is Mike from PA's Discord does movie nights every Friday. Like they show the full-blown movie? Really? So wait, Grim, you're claiming that Emma Vigilant, or Vigilant, I can never remember how to say her last name. I'm sorry, Emma. She had anti-J17 takes. J17 are the activists, the Antifa, Black Bloc activists and protesters who showed up to protest in D.C. on January. J20, I'm sorry. J20, excuse me. I don't know why I said J17. J20 activists who showed up to protest Donald Trump's inauguration in 2017 on January 20th, 2017. And, there was some violence. There was some property damage, property destruction, bricks through windows, things like that. But, they tried to really, the government tried to really go after the people who were arrested, tried to imprison them for something like 80 years. And at the end of the day, not a single one of them ended up getting charged. They took a few of them to court. The cases completely failed, and then they just dropped the charges against everybody else because it was complete. What is it called? Oh my God, I'm having a mental block. They tried to make an example out of them, and they overcharged them, and it was just ridiculous. You're claiming Emma was against... Grim says, Emma, in her reporting for TYT Politics, now Rebel headquarters, repeatedly condemned the Black Bloc Antifa who were kettled at Trump's inauguration and should be found guilty. No, she didn't say that. I refuse to believe it. Grim says, everyone at TYT did, except for Hassan. I would have to go back and see. I don't know. I don't know. I believe you though, Grim. If you're saying it, if you're, I'm sure that's not her position anymore. Grim says it's okay, you're wrong. Well, I'm not wrong because I can't be wrong because I haven't seen it. I'm just semi-ironically going, no, I can't believe it. But I'm not taking a position because I don't know. If there's footage out there, it's out there, and I'll have to take a look. But no, I'm. This is not focused on her or anything, but I don't think I have no time for anyone who condemns black bloc tactics or Antifa tactics on the street. I think that's if you're gonna spend the time to condemn that, I mean you're doing a real disservice to the movement. Come on. Who cares? A brick through a Starbucks window. She left me all alone, all alone. If you get that reference, you're cool. Rude Ricky on Twitch says, I don't remember Emma being on that page. I mean, I don't know. I could believe it. I could believe it in some sense, and I could also not believe it in many. Like, I don't know. I have to see it. I don't think Grimm is lying, but I need to see it to believe it. Grimm, for people who aren't familiar with Grimm, I see people in the Twitch chat are getting angry at Grimm. For people who aren't familiar with Grimm, he's a regular listener to the show. And have you ever met someone who holds a grudge forever? I know people like that. I have close family members who are like that. They'll remember that one thing forever and never let you live it down. That's Grimm. That's just who he is. Godcat says, F this Binder, let's go find Bigfoot Jesus on the beach. You'll all have to watch the fun half of the Majority Report earlier today to get that reference. Forgot the Guillotine says, talk to her about it, Binder. Well, I mean, I don't want to bring it up randomly out of the blue unless it comes up on the show. I'm not going to go, hey, Emma, how you doing? Wonderful week you've had. That's great. By the way, did you shit all over the J20 Black Bloc protesters 3 years ago, 4 years ago? I mean, did you, Emma? Did you? Mountain Dragon here says, I can see TYT speaking out against anyone resorting to violence. All of TYT, and rightly so, has spoken out against protesters resorting to violence because it ruins the Twitch thing. Cut them off, the restream chat. I guess Twitch allows longer chat messages than because it ruins the message. I see it in the other chat because it ruins the message. I disagree. I mean, I don't disagree with you saying that TYT believes that, but I disagree with it being rightly so, and that protesters who resort to violence distort the message. I don't believe that. I don't agree with that at all. Sometimes the situation calls for violence. I don't think anyone should lose their life. I don't think person-on-person violence is a necessity. But, disrupting the regular flow of things by causing property damage, I don't think that's correct. Your assessment there is correct, though. And, when I mean person-on-person violence, I'm talking about, I guess it's easier to say I'm not talking about, someone sucker punching Richard Spencer. That's the good kind of violent protest. Grim says, yeah, dude, if you want my friends and lovers locked up for the rest of their lives, you made an enemy for life. Damn, Grim. How many of those J20 protesters were your lovers? You get around, buddy. Evan says nonviolent protests are historically more effective, but sometimes you got to kick back. It depends. I think the threat of violence has made nonviolent protesters more effective, because if the threat of violence is there, Malcolm X tactics, then those in charge will be less inclined to work with the nonviolent protesters, Martin Luther King Jr., to get to the point of enacting social change. So, I'm not, it's not preferable, I guess you can say, to see, like, I don't want people killing each other over this, but, sometimes a little bit of violence, especially when it comes to property. I don't think that's such a bad thing for the greater good if the message is righteous. As Bob C in the YouTube chat says, good trouble. Right. John Lewis is probably talking about more, nonviolent protests, but I'm sure, especially during the civil rights movement, I'm sure he was, even if he didn't endorse it, was at least understanding of those who went the Malcolm X route instead of the MLK route. Like Zoe says, there you go, diversity of tactics. That's really, I think if you're gonna have an opinion on this sort of thing one way or another, you have to understand that aspect, the diversity of tactics, and how effective having different protesters who believe in different methods of getting to the common goal, how important that is to in that effectiveness. Ryan says property damage isn't violence, though. I mean, I don't really think it is, but most people do. So I'm speaking to that aspect. You see someone take a bat to a Walmart window or something like that. You ask the broad public what they would classify that. I'll guarantee you, like 9 out of 10 people would call that violence. Didn't I have a few more clips? Let me see. Do I have other clips? I think there was a clip or two I wanted to get to. Let me take a quick look. All right. Let's get to this. So, for those of you who don't know, there's a new show taking Fox News by storm, and it's Gutfeld. That's right, Greg Gutfeld has his own show on Fox News, and you might be unaware of it because it's not a Fox News morning show like Fox and Friends. It's not a Fox News daytime show like some of their more straightforward news programs. It's not a Fox primetime show like Tucker Carlson or Sean Hannity. It's a Fox News late night talk show. That's right. Fox News getting into the late night talk business, giving some competition to the Jimmy Kimmels, the Jimmy Fallons, the Stephen Colberts. And I can't think of a better person to take those comedy big league personalities on than Greg Gutfeld. And if you are aware of his show, it's because you've probably seen everyone shitting all over it online, because it is horrendous. It's just terrible, honestly. The jokes have bombed in every which way. I mean, I can't even keep a straight face about pretending he's even on par with even some cornballs like Jimmy Fallon. He is so bad. It is so bad. And this clip, I think, is the perfect encapsulation of how bad this show is. And it's because this clip shows that even when it comes to bad conservative comedy, they can't think of even more than one joke. Here are 3 separate nights of the Gutfeld program that started this week. Gutfeld night 1, 2, and 3, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. You tell me if you notice something here.
Meanwhile, what's on CNN?
You, sir, are a racist. Racist, white male, terrible. Racist.
You're the racist.
Awful.
Night 1.
That's from the Don Lemon Hour. We went to CNN for comment.
Night
this
2.
is the most racist panel I have ever been on.
Racist,
you two are racist, like
racist, white
racist,
male, baseball, racist,
obvious
racist, very racist,
racist,
disgusting racist.
Does Don Lemon even show up anymore? Take a look at what's on CNN right now.
Night 3.
Grandmas
Knitting,
are systemic
butterscotch
racism.
candies,
If you don't call your
plastic-covered
grandma and
couches,
tell her she's a
it's
racist,
all racist.
you're a racist.
Maybe the bear does have a point there.
The bear is a racist.
He is a racist. All right, so the
conservatives are getting better at comedy, folks. Get worried. The conservatives are getting better at comedy. They're getting funnier and funnier and funnier. Comedians all across the country are shaking in their boots. Greg Gutfeld's going to take all their stand-up spots, going to take all their comedy talk shows. Folks, listen, if you're going to do the callback joke, it's got to be funny. It's got to be really funny. Otherwise, what it basically is you are so lazy and so bad at your job that you're just making the same joke every night because you got nothing else to say. So bad, yet so good because it's so bad to watch. Thanks, Greg Gutfeld. Let's go back to the super chats here. Tony R with a super chat. Matt, great guest selection as always. Very useful stuff. Thank you, Tony. And Andy C with a super chat in Canadian money. Ooh. Thoughts on Q, Into the Storm, and the Ron Watkins thing? You just missed it, buddy. I did just do a whole thing about it. Rewind the show. You'll definitely, I don't want to re-say, but I will basically answer your question again because, like I said, I'm going to do a whole show on the HBO series once I finish watching it. What else? What else did I want to get to? Oh, right. I'm not going to show it, but I just wanted to briefly mention it. Steven Crowder yesterday on his YouTube show decided to do the dumbest, most ridiculous stunt. I mean, just gross and stupid and an attempt to be edgy, but you just come across like an a-hole because it's not even well thought out. It's just dumb idiot, random Republicans have been getting in trouble with their employer for just taking pictures of themselves doing this and putting it on social media. So, I mean, it's not even an original idea. Steven Crowder did an experiment on his show on YouTube yesterday, where he basically had one of his producers kneel on his neck for, what was it, 8-9 minutes, however long that cop Chauvin kneeled on George Floyd's neck last year which resulted in the death of George Floyd, to prove, according to Crowder, that George Floyd was not killed by the knee on his neck. I mean, just so stupid. I mean, first of all, it's just dumb to do that because obviously the situation is completely different. It's just gross. Second of all, if you have seen the footage, which again, I'm not going to air here, if you have seen the footage or even a still, it is super clear that the producer is putting his knee on Crowder's back and not his neck. I believe it was even originally on his neck for like a little bit, and then Crowder was uncomfortable, so they moved it to his back. And then also, it's clear the producer is not applying the pressure on Crowder like Officer Chauvin was applying his full body pressure on George Floyd. I mean, just give me a break. Just ridiculous. Crowder is scraping the bottom barrel here in his quest for relevancy. Like, he's completely just like begging for attention at this point. In just the most, the most groveling way, literally throwing himself on the floor to try to prove that George Floyd wasn't murdered by a knee digging into the back of his neck. Even though experts, even a friggin' MMA professional, a mixed martial artist who was there on the scene, who saw what happened, explained exactly what the move was to George Floyd in MMA and exactly what that sort of move does to your body. And when applied for as long as Chauvin did to Floyd, I mean, give me a break, Crowder, you sad sack of shit. I mean, what a sad shell of a man. What a sad human being. It's not even funny. Like, listen, I'm someone who's even like, if you have a hilarious joke that makes an incredible point, then whatever, get as edgy as you want to make that point. I am open to that completely. But if you're going to just do like something that's so low bore, then you're just an asshole, man. Not even creative. Just a sad, unoriginal, untalented hack. Not smart in a right-wing pundit sense, or a political pundit sense, I should say, in general, because there's really no smart right-wing pundits, but not smart in a political punditry sense, not funny in the comedic sense, just an untalented hack, Crowder. Did you run that one by your dad, Stephen? We all know you run your business decisions, like who you're going to debate, by your pops. Grown man asking daddy if he should debate Sam Cedar. Oh, that's a bad idea, daddy. Okay, I won't do that. But I'll have someone kneel on the back of my neck to show that the good police officer didn't murder the black man. Baby, Crowder, baby. Child. I can't imagine being Steven Crowder. What a sad human being. Untalented, unfunny, stupid, not smart. And on top of all that, doesn't even have the guts, doesn't even have the basic sense to make his own decisions. He needs to run it by his daddy. That's right, Ryan. Hashtag cold feet Crowder. Child. A child. That's even, my My 5-year-old son is smarter, funnier, and's got more guts than Crowder. My 1.5-year-old daughter, smarter, funnier, and got more guts than Crowder. Calling him a child is a disservice to children. Go back to Wisconsin, Crowder. Let's see you get rocked by another union guy. Because you can't even stand on your own 2 feet, even when you're physically there. Even in the physical sense, you can't stand on your own 2 feet. Let alone needing your daddy to make decisions for you. Oh, right. Like we talked about earlier. We briefly mentioned the Crowder thing earlier on the Majority Report. And we talked about how Hitchens and Mancow both got waterboarded back in the day. Because their take, at least Mancow's take, was waterboarding wasn't torture. So they offered up they volunteered to be waterboarded. And you know what? They got waterboarded, and guess what they found out afterwards? They came out and they said, "Oh yeah, we were wrong. Waterboarding is torture." Even they have the guts to actually take the challenge and then admit they were wrong. Crowder didn't even have the guts to take his own cornball ass racist challenge. Because the producer was making him uncomfortable. Daddy Crowder doesn't want little Steven to be uncomfortable. So he didn't even take his own racist ass challenge. And then, of course, on top of that, because he didn't actually take the challenge, he didn't even have the guts to admit he was wrong, which he would have if he actually had someone put their entire body weight down on their knee into the back of his neck as he laid handcuffed face down on the floor. Right, like A2 the Zizzo says on YouTube, Crowder couldn't even fake it right. Hitchens full on got himself proper waterboarded. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, folks. That is our show for today. Hope you all enjoyed. Let me make sure there's no more other super chats that I missed. Gotta always read them super chats. Oh, here we go. Kowalski with another super chat. Cows die to fund my super chats. Cow blood money. What? Well, I don't know if I want to know about that. Maybe next time. You can tell me next time, Kowalski. But anyway, thanks everyone for tuning in. The YouTube audience, my new viewers on Twitch. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/MattBinder. Also, follow the Twitch channel, twitch.tv/MattBinder. Last Friday, I did a game stream with Mike from the Humanist Report. We played Fall Guys together for 2 hours. That was a lot of fun. And I'll be doing more of those type of fun streams. Obviously, do it with a weekly show. Put up regular clips on YouTube. Trying to do as much more content as I can do to grow the subscriber base on YouTube, Twitch, etc. To grow the Patreon, Again, patreon.com/MattBinder. Cannot do this show without the support of my patrons. Review the show on iTunes if you can. It really does help. I do pay attention every now and then to the iTunes Apple Podcast rankings. And there's a direct correlation between when the show pops in the rankings due to subscribers and reviews and its downloads. Helps people discover the show. Also, if you're one of those new patrons who joined over the past week, let me know where you discovered the show. I would love to know. That's all for this week. See you all next time on Doomed.